welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. The Charmed Circle, Part 6. The funeral was a modest, a love her and shove her affair. Glinda's close friends attending, filling 2 pews. In the second tier, the chapel, a flock of Ammas made a professional coterie. The rest of the chapel was empty. After the corpse and its winding sheet did along the oil chute to the furnace, the mourners and collies retired to Madame Morrible's private parlor, where she proved to have sanctioned no expense in the refreshments. The tea was ancient stock, stale as sawdust. The biscuits were hard. There was no saffron cream or tarmono marmalade. Glinda said reprovingly to the head, "Not even a small bowl of cream?" And Madame Morrible answered, "My girl, I try to protect my charges from the worst of food shortages by judicious shopping and going without myself. But I am not wholly responsible for your ignorance. If only people would obey the wizard absolutely, there would be abundance. Don't you realize that conditions verge on famine and cows are dying of starvation 200 miles from here? That makes saffron cream very dear to the market." Glinda began to move away, but Madame Morrible reached out a raft of cushiony, bulbous, bejeweled fingers. The touch made Glinda's blood run cold. "I should like to see you and Miss Nessarose and Miss Elphaba," said the head, "after the guests leave. Please wait behind." "We're nabbed for a lecture," whispered Glinda to the Throp sisters. "We have to be yelled at." "Not a word about what Amma Clutch said, or that she came back," said Elphaba urgently. "Got that, Nessa? Nanny?" They all nodded. Bach and Arabic making their goodbyes, so the group was recovering at the pub at the Regent's Parade. The girls agreed to meet him there after their interviews with the head. They would manage a more honest memorial service for Amma Clutch of the Peach and Kidneys. When the small crowd had dispersed, only Grommatic clearing away the cups and crumbs, Madame Morrible herself banked up to the fire. A gesture of chumminess lost to no one, and sent Grommatic away. "Later, thingy," she said. "Later. Go lubricate yourself in some closet somewhere." Grommatic wheeled away with, if it was possible, an offended air. Elphaba had to repress an urge to kick it with the tip of her stout block boot. "You too, Nanny," Madame Morrible said. "A little break from your labors." "Oh, no," Nanny said. "Nanny doesn't leave her Nessa." "Yes, Nanny does. Her sister is perfectly capable of caring for her," said the head. "Aren't you, Miss Elphaba, the very soul of charity?" Elphaba opened her mouth. The word soul always provoked her, Glinda knew, but closed it again. She had a wincing nod towards the door. Without a word, Nanny got up to leave, but before the door closed behind her, Nanny said, "It's not my place to complain, but really, no cream at a funeral?" "Help," said Madame Morrible when she let the door close, but Glinda wasn't sure if this was criticism of the serpents or a bid for sympathy. The head rallied by herself, arranging her skirts in the vents and the braids of her smart parlor jacket. In orangey copper sequins, she looked like huge, upholstered, appended goldfish goddess. How did she ever get to be head, Glinda wondered. "Now that Amma Clutch has gone to ash, we shall say, nay, we must bravely move on," Madame Morrible began. "My girls, when I first asked you to recount the sad story of her last words, it was essential therapy in your recovery from grief." The girls looked at one another. Glinda, in this situation, the spokesperson, took a deep breath and said, "Oh, she spewed nonsense to the last." "No surprise, the dotty old thing," said Madame Morrible, "but what nonsense?" "We couldn't make it out," said Glinda. "But I wonder if she talked about the death of the goat." Glinda said, "Oh, the goat? Well, I couldn't really tell. I suspected that, in her deranged condition, she might return to that critical moment. The dying often try to make sense at the last possible moment of the puzzles of their lives. Useless effort, of course. No doubt Amma Clutch was puzzled by what she came across. The goat's body, the blood, and Grommatic." "Oh," said Glinda faintly. The 2 sisters beside her were careful not to stir. "The terrible morning. I was up early at my spiritual medication that I noticed a light in Dr. Dillman's lab. So I sent Grommatic over with a cheering pot of tea for the old goat. Grommatic found the animal slumped over a broken lens. He'd apparently stumbled and severed his own jugular vein. Such a sad accident, born of academic zeal, not to say hubris, and a pitiful lack of common sense. Rest, we all need rest. The brightest of us need our rest. Grommatic, in its confusion, felt for a pulse, none to be found, and I surmised that is when Alma clutched her eyes to see that Grommatic splashed with spurts of the strong circulatory pulse. Alma clutch arrived out of nowhere, and none of her business, I might add. But let's not malign the dead, shall we? Glinda gulped back new tears and did not mention that Alma Clutch had mentioned seeing something unusual the evening before and had wandered out to check. I always think that the shock of all that blood might have been the final straw that sent Alma Clutch pitching back to her ailment. Incidentally, you see why I dismissed Grommatic just now. It's still very sensitive and suspect. I believe that Alma Clutch thought it was responsible for the goat slaughter. Glinda said waveringly, Madame Morrible, you should know that Alma Clutch never suffered such a disease I described to you. I invented it, but I didn't assign it. I didn't commit it to her, or her to it. Elphaba looked at Madame Morrible steadily, keeping her entrance modest. Nessarose's eyelashes fluttered. If Madame Morrible knew Glinda's news already, her face didn't give it away. She looked as placid as a tethered rowboat. Well, this only lends weight to my observations, she allowed. This is an imaginative, even a prophetic power in your pointed little society skull, Miss Glinda. The head stood, her skirts rustling, wind through a field of wheat. What I say now is in the strictest confidence. I expect girls to obey my command. Are we agreed? She seemed to take her stunned silence as assent. She looked down on them. That's why she seemed so fish, Glinda suddenly thought. She hardly ever blinked. By my authority, you vested me as to be named. I have charged with a crucial task, said the head. A task essential to the internal security of Oz. I have been working to fulfill this task for some years, and from the time is right and the goods are at my disposal. She scrutinized them. They were goods. You will not repeat what you hear in this room, she said. You will not want to, you will choose not to, and I am wrapping each one of you in a binding cocoon as regards this very sensitive material. No, she held up a hand at Elva's protest. No, you have no right to object. The deed is already done, and you must listen and be open to what I say. Glinda tried to examine herself to see if she felt wrapped, or bound, or spell-chilled, but she only felt frightened and young, which may be close to the same thing. She glanced at her sisters. Nessarose in her dazzling shoes were back in the chair, nostrils dilating in fright or excitement. Elphaba, on the other hand, looked as stolid and cross as usual. You live in a little womb here. Tight little nest, girl with girl. Oh, I know you have your silly boys on the edge, forgettable things. Good for one thing only, and not even reliable at that. But I digress. I must say that you know little or nothing of the state of the nation today. You have no sense of the pitch of unrest to which things have mounted. Setting communities on the edge, ethnic groups across one another, bankers against farmers, factories against shopkeepers. Oz is a seething volcanic threatening to erupt and burning with its own poisonous pus. Our wizard seems strong enough. But is he really? He has a grasp of internal politics. He's no slouch at negotiating rates of exchange with bloodsuckers of Ebbs or Gemma Co. or Leon. He rules the Emma City with an industry and an ability of the decaying knob-jawed Ozma line never dreamed of. Without him, we'd have swept away in our firestorm years ago. We can but be grateful. A straight fist does wonders in a situation. Walk softly, but carry a big stick. I see I offend. Well, man is always good for the public face of power. No. Yes, but things are not always what they seem. It has been clear for some time that the wizard's bag of tricks would not do forever. There are bound to be popular uprising, and the stupid sons of the kind in which strong, dumb people enjoyed getting killed for the sake of political changes that'll be rolled back within the decade. Add such meaning to our lives, don't you think? One can imagine any other reason for it. At any rate, the wizard needs some agents. He requires a few generals. In the long run, some people with managing skills. Some people with gumption. In a word, women. I have called you 3 girls here. You are not women yet, but the moment is closing in on you faster than you might think. Despite my opinion as to your behavior, I have had to single you out. There's more to each of you than meets the eye. Miss Nessarose, being the newest, you're the most hidden to me. But once you outgrow that fetching habit of faith you will display at ferocious authority, your bodily disorder is of no significance here. Miss Elphaba, you are an isolate, and even in my binding spell, you are there stewing in the scorn of every word I say. As evidence of great internal power and force of will, something I deeply respect even when marshaled against me. You have no sign of respective interest in sorcery, and I don't claim you have any natural aptitude. But your splendid lone wolf spirit and spit and spirit can be harnessed. Oh, yes, it can. And you needn't live a life of unfulfilled rage. And Miss Glinda, you have surprised yourself with the talents at sorcery you possess. I knew you would. I had hoped your inclinations might rub off on Miss Elphaba, but they haven't, is the only firmer proof of Miss Elphaba's iron character. I see in your eyes you all question my methods. You think, somewhat wildly, did horrible Morrible cause that nail to pierce my Alma Clutch's foot, making me have to room with Elphaba? Did she cause Alma Clutch to come downstairs and find the dead goat, the better to get her out of the way and a required nanny, thus Nessarose, to show up on the scene? How flattering that you imagine that I have such power. The head paused and came to blushing, which in her was something like separating cream on a flame set too high. I'm a handmaiden at the service of superiors, she continued, and my special talent is to encourage talent. In my own small way, I shall be called to a vocation of education, and here I make my own little contributions to history. Now, to be specific, I want you to consider your futures. I would like to name you, baptize you as it were, as a trio of adepts. In the long run, I would like to assign you the behind-the-scenes ministerial duties to different parts of the country. I am empowered to do this, remember, by those whose bootstraps I am not worthy to lick. But she looked smug, as if she thought herself quite worthy indeed of attention from these mysterious forces. Let's say you will be my secret partners of the highest level of government. You'll be anonymous ambassadors of peace, helping to restrain the unruly element among our less civilized populations. Nothing is decided, of course, and you do have a say in the matter. A say to me, not to which anyone or anything else as the spell goes. But I would like to think about it. I need, eventually, to place an adept in Gillikin somewhere. Miss Glinda, with your middle-range social position and your transport ambition, you would slime your way into the ballroom of Marguerite's and still be at home in the pigsties. Oh, don't squirm. You're so good-bloody is only on one side, and it's not terribly refined strain anyway. The adept of Gillikin. Miss Glinda, does it appeal? Glinda could only listen. Miss Elphaba, said Madame Morrible, full of teenage scorn of inherited position, you're none the less the Throp third descending, and your great-grandfather, the eminent Throp, is his dotage. One day you will inherit what is left of coal and grounds, the retention pile and the nest hardings. You can manage to the adept of Munchkin Land. Your fortunate skin condition notwithstanding, indeed perhaps because of it, you have developed feistiness and iconoclasm that's just faintly appealing when it doesn't nauseate. It will come to service, believe me. And Miss Nessarose, she went on, having grown up in Quadling Country, you will have to return there with Nanny. The social situation in Quadling Country is such a mess, but with decimation of the squelchling froglet population, but it comes back in small measure. That should be someone to oversee the ruby mines. We need someone to look after things in the South. Once you recover from your religious mania, it'll be a perfect setting. You don't need a life of high society anyway, not without arms. After all, how can one dance without arms? As for the Vinkus, we don't imagine we'll need a depth station there, at least not in your lifetimes. The master plan eradicate any predictable population in the godforsaken place. Here the head paused and looked. Oh, girls, I know you're young. I know that grieves you. You must think of it as a position sentence, though. You mustn't think of it as a prison sentence, but as an opportunity. You must ask yourselves, how will I grow in a position, albeit a silent one, of prominence and responsibility? How many talents flourish? How many ideas may help us? Elphaba's foot twisted, caught on the edge of a side table, and a cup and saucer fell to the floor and smashed. You are so predictable, said Madame Morrible, sighing. That's what makes my job so easy. Now, girls, bound as you are to an oath of silence, I bid you to go away and think about what I've said. Please don't even try to discuss together, as it will give you headaches and cramps. You won't be able to manage it. Somehow in the next semester, I will call each of you in here, and you can give me your answer. And if you should not choose your help in its hour of need. She clasped her hands in a parody of despair. Well, you're not the only fish in the sea, are you? That afternoon had turned glowery, with heaps of plum-colored clouds in the north behind the bluestone spires and steeples. The temperatures had dropped 20 degrees since this morning, and the girls kept their shawls pulled close as they pulled in the pub. Nanny, shivering in the dirty wind, cried, and what did the old busybody have to say that I couldn't be allowed to hear? But there was nothing they could say. Glinda couldn't even meet each other's eyes. Well, lift a glass of champagne for Alma Clutch, said Elphaba finally, when we get to the peach and kidneys. I'll set it for a spoonful of real cream, said Nanny. How pinching that old sow is. No respect for the dead. But Glinda found that the binding spell was deeper, cut closer than she had even understood. It wasn't merely that they couldn't talk about it. Already she had begun to lose words about it, to falter in her thinking, to commit the interview to memory. There was a proposal. It was a proposal, wasn't it? Of course, questionable proposition in it, the civil service, doing some ballroom dancing, which didn't make sense, some laughing, a glass of champagne, a handsome man taking off his cummerbund and pressing his starched cuffs against his neck, nibbling the tear-shaped rubies in her ears. Talk softly, but carry a big stick. Or was that not a proposal, but a prophecy? A little friendly encouragement about the future, and she had been alone. The others had been listening. Madame Morrible had spoken directly. A lovely testimony to Glinda's potential. The chance to rise. Walk softly, but marry a big prick. A man draping his evening tie on a bedstead, and rolling his diamond studs, nudging them on his nose, down the declivity of her superior neck. It was a dream. Madame Morrible couldn't have said that. She must be dazed with grief. Poor Alma Clutch. Had only been a word of condolence from the dear self-effacing head, who found it hard to speak in public, but a man's tongue between her legs, a spoon of saffron cream. Nessarose said, Catch her, I can't, and she sat against Nancy's bosom. and Glinda swooned at the same moment. Elphaba thrust out strong arms and scooped Glinda in mid-collapse. Glinda didn't really lose consciousness, but the uncomfortable physical nears of hawk-faced Elphaba, the undesired act of desire, made her want to shiver with revulsion and to purr at the same time. "Steady on, girl. Not here," said Elphaba. "Resist, come on." Resist was just what Glinda didn't want to do. But after all, the shadow of an apple cart on the edge of the market, where merchants were selling the last fish of the day, cheap, well, this was hardly the place. Tough skin," said Elphaba, appearing to pull the words back from her throat. "Come on, Glinda. You've got better brains. Come on. I love you too much. Snap out of it, you idiot." "Well, really," she said to Elphaba as Elphaba dumped out her heap of moldy packing straw. "No need to be so romantic about it." But she felt better, as if a wave of illness had just passed. "You girls, I tell you, the faints, it comes from those tighter shoes," said Nanny, huffing and loosing Nessarose's glamorous footwell. "Sensible folk wear leather or wood." She managed Nessarose's instep for a minute, and Nessarose moaned and arched her back, but began in a moment to breathe more normally. "Welcome back," said Nanny after a while. "What goodies were you all snagging here with the head?" "Come on, they're all waiting," said Elphaba. "No sense dawdling. I'm afraid it might rain." At the Peach and Kidneys, the rest of the gang had commandeered a table and an alcove step at the main floor. They were well into their cups by the point in the afternoon. It was clear tears had been shed. Averick sat slouched against the brick wall of the student den, one arm slung around Fiyero and his legs stretched out in the Shen-Shen's lap. Bach and Crope were arguing about anything, and Tebek was singing an interminable song to Fanny, who looked as if she was going to drive a dart through the thick of his thigh. "Ah, the ladies," slurred Erevik, and made it as if to rise. They sang and chattered and ordered sandwiches, and Averick plunked down in embarrassment of coins to demand a salver of saffron, as in Alma Clutch's memory. Money did wonders, and the cream was found in the larder, which gave Glinda an uneasy feeling, though she didn't know why. They spooned the airy mounds into one another's mouth, sculpted with it, mixed it with their champagne, threw it in the small goblets at one another until the manager came over and told them to get the hell out. They complied and grumbled. They didn't know it was the last time they would all be together, or they might have lingered. A burst rain had come and gone, but the streets were still noisy with runoff, and the lamplight glistened and danced, and the silvery black currents of water caught among the cobbles, imagining the possible bringing in the shadows, or the hungry wonder lurking nearby. They stood close together. "I've got an idea," said Erevik, putting one foot his way and the other, as if he were as flexible as a man of straw. "Who's man enough for Philosophy Club tonight?" "Oh, no, you don't," said Nanny, who hadn't had that much to drink. "I want to go," whined Nessarose, swaying more than usual. "You don't even know what it is," Bach said, giggling and hiccuping. "I don't care. I don't want to leave tonight," Nessarose said. "We only have one another, and I don't want to be left out, and I don't want to go home." "Hush, Nessa. Hush, my pretty," said Elphaba. "That's not the place for you, or me either. Come on, we're going home, Glinda. Come on." "I have no Alma now," said wide-eyed Glinda, stabbing a finger toward Elphaba. "I am my own agent. I want to go to Philosophy Club and see if it's true." "The rest can do what they want, but we're going home," said Elphaba. Glinda veered toward Elphaba, who was homing in on a very uncertain-looking Bach. "Now, Bach, you don't want to go to that disgusting place, do you?" Elphaba was saying. "Come on, don't let the boys make you do something you don't want." "You don't know me," he said, appearing to address the hitching post. "Elphie, how do you know what I want, unless I find out?" "Come with us," said Fiyero to Elphaba. "Please, if we ask you politely." "I want to go too," whined Glinda. "Oh, come on, Glinny Dinny," said Bach. "Maybe they'll take us, for old time's sake, as never was." The others awakened a slumbering cab driver and hired his services. Bach, Glinda, Elfie, come on, Ervic called from the window. Where's your nerve? Bach, think about this, Elphaba urged. I always think. I never feel, I never live, he moaned. Can't I live once in a while? Just once, just because I'm short? I'm not an infant, Elfie. Not till now, said Elphaba, ramming smartly tonight, and thought Glinda and rushed herself away to climb into the cab, but Elphaba grabbed her by the elbow and pivoted her around. You can't, she whispered. We're going to the Emerald City. I'm going to the philosophy clubs with my friends, and tonight, hissed Elphaba. You little idiot. We have no time to waste on sex. Nanny had led Nessarose away already, and the cabbie clucked his reins and the equipage lumbered away. Glinda stumbled and said, What did you think you were about to say? I already said it, and I'm not saying it again, said Elphaba. My dear, you and I are going to Credge Hall tonight only to pick a valise. Then we're going away. But the gates will be locked. It's over the garden wall, said Elphaba, and we're going to see the wizard, come what may, and hell to pay. And that's the end of that chapter. Bye.